Asterisk, asterisk. My parents spent $120,000 on my brother's dream, gave me nothing. 5 years later, I knocked on their door. Asterisk, asterisk. I still remember the exact moment my childhood ended. I was 17, sitting at our kitchen table with college brochures spread out in front of me like a rainbow of possibilities. Northwestern, Duke, Columbia. Each one felt like a doorway to the life I'd been dreaming of since I was 12 years old. Becoming a doctor, maybe a surgeon, helping people, making my parents proud. My mom was making her famous lasagna. The smell of garlic and oregano filled the air, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Normal. Like the conversation I was about to have would go the way I'd imagined it in my head 1,000 times. "Mom! Dad!" I said, my voice shaking with excitement. I got into Northwestern's pre-med program. Dad looked up from his newspaper, the sports section, as always. Mom paused, the wooden spoon dripping with sauce hovering over the pan. That's wonderful, sweetheart," Mom said, but her voice had this strange quality to it, like she was reading lines from a script she didn't want to perform. I pushed the acceptance letter across the table. They're offering some financial aid, but we'd still need to cover about $30,000 a year. I know it's a lot, but I've been working at the grocery store, saving every penny. I have almost $4,000 already, and I could take out loans for— "Honey!" Dad interrupted, folding his newspaper with deliberate precision. "We need to talk." The way he said it made my stomach drop. You know that feeling when you're on a roller coaster and you've just crested the highest hill? That split second before gravity takes over and pulls you down? That's exactly what this was. "Your brother's band," Dad continued, "they got offered a record deal." I blinked. "Okay, that's great for Jake. But what does that have to do with— "They need $120,000 to make it happen," Mom said quickly, like ripping off a Band-Aid. "For studio time, equipment, marketing, a music video. It's a real opportunity. A once-in-a-lifetime chance." The kitchen went quiet except for the bubbling lasagna. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. "And?" I whispered. Dad cleared his throat. "We've decided to invest in his future. The music industry, if he makes it, he could make millions. College will always be there, Sarah, but this opportunity won't." I stared at them. My parents. The people who had driven me to every academic competition. Who had a bumper sticker on their Honda that read, "Proud parent of an honor roll student." The people who used to joke that they were raising a future brain surgeon. What about my future? The words came out smaller than I intended. "You're smart, sweetheart," Mom said, finally turning around to face me. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying. "You'll figure it out, you always do. But Jake, he needs this push. He's not like you. He's not naturally gifted at everything." Not naturally gifted at everything. The words hit me like a physical blow. "I worked for this," I said, my voice getting stronger. "I have a 4.2 GPA. I've been taking extra shifts at work. I've been planning this since I was in middle school. This isn't just some random dream. This is my life plan." "And we're so proud of you for that," Dad said. "But you don't understand the music business. This is Jake's only shot. College isn't going anywhere. But the financial aid is." I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the linoleum floor. "This acceptance is for this year. These scholarships are for this year. You can't just pause my life because it's more convenient for Jake's timeline." "Don't raise your voice at us," Dad said sharply. "We're doing what we think is best for this family." "For Jake," I corrected. "You're doing what's best for Jake." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom turned back to her lasagna. Dad picked up his newspaper, and I stood there, 17 years old, watching my future crumble while the smell of oregano made me nauseous. "I can't believe this," I whispered. "You'll understand when you're older," Mom said without turning around. "Sometimes, parents have to make hard choices." I looked at the acceptance letter still lying on the table. Northwestern University. The letterhead was so crisp, so official. I picked it up and held it for a moment, feeling the weight of the paper, the texture of the seal. "What am I supposed to do?" I asked. Community college, Dad said, not looking up from the sports scores. 2 years there, then transfer. It's more economical anyway. Community college? After 12 years of straight A's, after countless hours studying while Jake was out partying with his band, after sacrificing my social life to work extra shifts, community college. I walked upstairs to my room and closed the door. Then I sat on my bed and cried for 3 hours straight. That night, I could hear Jake come home. His laugh echoed through the thin walls as he told Mom and Dad about his day, about the band, about his dreams that were suddenly $120,000 more attainable. I put my pillow over my head and tried to disappear. The next few months were torture. Every day, I watched my parents bend over backwards to make Jake's dream come true. Dad took out a second mortgage. Mom started working extra shifts at the hospital where she was a nurse. They talked about the investment at every dinner, how proud they were, how this was going to change everything. Meanwhile, I enrolled at Riverside Community College, RCC. Even the abbreviation sounded small. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing inherently wrong with community college. I met some amazing people there, had some great professors, but it wasn't where I was supposed to be. Every day felt like settling. Every day felt like proof that I mattered less. Jake's band was called Electric Midnight. Even writing that name now makes me roll my eyes. They were, okay, not terrible, but not revolutionary either. Generic rock with lyrics about heartbreak and rebellion that felt borrowed from every band that came before them. But my parents treated them like they were the next Beatles. I remember one particularly painful evening when Jake's band was practicing in our garage. I was in my room, trying to study for my chemistry midterm, and the bass was so loud it was making my desk vibrate. I went downstairs to ask if they could keep it down. "Hey," I said, knocking on the garage door. "Could you guys maybe?" "Sarah?" Jake grinned at me, his hair all messy from headbanging. "Come listen to our new song." "I really need to study." "Come on, this is going to be on our first album. You have to hear this." So I stood there in our garage surrounded by thousands of dollars worth of equipment that could have been my college tuition, and listened to Jake sing about how hard it was to be misunderstood. The irony wasn't lost on me. After the song, Jake's bandmates Tommy on bass, Derek on drums, and Marcus on lead guitar all looked at me expectantly. "Well," Jake asked, "what do you think?" It's good," I lied. "Good?" Tommy laughed. "Dude, your sister has no taste. This is going to be huge." Jake just shrugged. "She's more of a book person anyway." A book person, like that was some kind of limitation. Like intelligence was a personality quirk instead of an achievement. I went back upstairs and tried to study, but I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about parallel universes, about the version of me who was sitting in a dorm room at Northwestern, surrounded by other pre-med students, planning study groups, and dreaming about our futures in medicine. Instead, I was here, listening to Electric Midnight practice the same 4 chords over and over again. The worst part wasn't even the money, though. The worst part was watching my parents' faces light up when they talked about Jake's music, and seeing that same light dim when the conversation turned to my academic achievements. When I made Dean's List at RCC, Mom said, "That's nice, honey," and immediately changed the subject to ask if I'd heard Jake's latest recording. When I got accepted to volunteer at the local hospital, which was going to look great on my eventual medical school applications, Dad said, "Just make sure it doesn't interfere with your work schedule. We need you to keep contributing to the household." Contributing to the household. While they were hemorrhaging money to fund Jake's rock star fantasy, I started picking up extra shifts at the grocery store, not because I wanted to, but because the guilt was eating me alive. Here were my parents, struggling financially, taking out loans and working overtime to support Jake's dream, and I felt like I needed to pull my weight. The grocery store became my sanctuary in a weird way. It was the one place where my achievements mattered. My manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, noticed that I was fast, reliable, and good with customers. She promoted me to shift supervisor within 6 months. "You're going places, Sarah," she told me one day as we were closing up. "I can see it in how you handle everything. You've got that drive." It was the first time in months someone had acknowledged my potential. But even that small victory felt hollow when I got home and saw Jake's gold records mounted on the living room wall. Not real gold records, printed ones he'd ordered online to visualize success, as he put it, but Mom had framed them like they were Grammy Awards. 2 years at community college felt like a lifetime. I kept my grades perfect, kept working, kept saving every penny I could. I had a plan: transfer to a 4-year university, finish my bachelor's degree, then medical school. It would take longer than I'd originally planned, but I'd get there. I applied to transfer programs at state schools, knowing they were my only financial option. I got accepted to several, including the University of Illinois, which had a decent pre-med program. When I told my parents, they were polite, congratulatory in that distant way you congratulate someone else's kid at a school play. "That's wonderful," Mom said. "How much will it cost?" When I told them about $20,000 a year after financial aid, Dad whistled low. "That's a lot of money, Sarah." "It's half of what Northwestern would have cost," I said. "Yes, but that was 2 years ago. Things are different now." Things were different now because they'd spent my college fund on Jake's band. "I can take out student loans," I said. "I've been saving money. I can cover some of it myself. I just need—" "We'll see," Dad said. "Let us think about it." They thought about it for 2 weeks. 2 weeks during which Jake got a tattoo of his band's logo on his forearm, a tattoo that cost more than my textbooks for an entire semester. Finally, they called me into the living room for another one of those conversations. You know the kind. The kind where, the answer before the question is asked. "Sweetheart," Mom started, "we've been talking about your college plans." I sat on the edge of the couch, my hands clenched in my lap. "And we think it might be better if you waited a bit longer. Maybe worked for a year or 2, saved up more money. Jake's band is at a crucial stage right now," Dad added. "They're so close to a breakthrough. The record label wants them to tour, which means more investment." "More investment in Jake," I said flatly. "Investment in the family," Dad corrected. "When he makes it big, we'll all benefit." I looked around our living room, at Jake's fake gold records, at the family photos where my academic awards were nowhere to be seen, but Jake's band photos were prominently displayed, at my parents, who were looking at me with that expression people give when they're asking you to be reasonable about something completely unreasonable. "What if he doesn't make it?" I asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a toxic gas. "He will," Mom said firmly. "We have to believe that." "But what if he doesn't? What if you spend all this money, and 2 years from now, he's working at a gas station, and I've missed my chance at medical school because I waited too long?" "That's not going to happen," Dad said. "How do you know?" "Because we're his parents and we believe in him. And I'm your daughter and you don't believe in me?" The silence that followed was answer enough. That night, I made a decision that would define the next 5 years of my life. I couldn't depend on my parents. I couldn't wait for them to suddenly realize that I was worth investing in. I had to invest in myself. I got online and researched every scholarship, every grant, every financial aid opportunity I could find. I applied for everything, even the weird ones, like the scholarship for left-handed students. I'm ambidextrous, so I figured it was worth a shot, and the one for students who had overcome adversity. Had I overcome adversity? I wasn't sure. Is being systematically overlooked by your own parents considered adversity? I wrote the essay anyway. I also started looking into programs that would let me work while going to school. That's how I found the nursing program at City General Hospital. They had a deal where you could work as a nursing assistant while taking accelerated nursing classes, and they'd help pay for your education in exchange for a commitment to work at the hospital after graduation. It wasn't medical school, but it was healthcare. It was helping people, and it was something I could do without my parents' help. The nursing program was brutal. 12-hour shifts at the hospital, followed by 4-hour classes, followed by studying until 2 a.m. I was exhausted, constantly. My social life, what little I'd had, completely disappeared. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was moving towards something. like I was building a future with my own hands. Meanwhile, Jake's band was making progress. They'd recorded an EP, they'd played some gigs around the city, they'd gotten a few hundred followers on social media. They were also burning through money like it was kindling. I didn't know the exact numbers. My parents stopped talking about finances around me, but I could see the stress lines deepening around Mom's eyes. I could see Dad checking his phone more often, probably looking at bank balances and credit card statements. But they never said anything, never admitted that maybe, just maybe, their investment wasn't paying off the way they'd hoped. And Jake was living his best life. He'd moved out of the family home and into a shared apartment with Tommy and Derek. He was working part-time at a music store, which barely covered his rent. But that was okay, because Mom and Dad were still supplementing his income. "It's temporary," I overheard Mom telling her sister on the phone, "just until the band takes off." I was in my second year of nursing school when Jake's band got what they thought was their big break. A record executive from Los Angeles wanted to meet with them. He flew out to Chicago specifically to see them perform. The whole family went to the show. Even me, though I had to trade shifts with a coworker to make it happen. We sat in this dingy club downtown, watching Jake and his bandmates perform for about 30 people and one guy in an expensive suit. They played their hearts out, I'll give them that. Jake's voice was strong. Marcus's guitar solos were impressive, and they had genuine chemistry on stage. For a moment, I allowed myself to think that maybe, just maybe, my parents had been right. Maybe this was going to work out. After the show, we all gathered around while Jake talked to the record executive. The man was polite, complimentary, and asked all the right questions about their musical influences and future plans. "I'll be in touch," he said, shaking Jake's hand. "You guys have real potential." We celebrated that night like Jake had just won a Grammy. Dad bought champagne, Mom cried happy tears. Jake was glowing with possibility. The record executive never called back. Week after week, Jake checked his phone obsessively. He called the man's office, left voicemails with his assistant, sent follow-up emails. Nothing. Finally, after 2 months, Jake managed to get the guy on the phone. The conversation lasted exactly 90 seconds. I know because Jake timed it and told us about every devastating second. He said they decided to go with a different sound, Jake explained to us at dinner, his voice flat with disappointment. Something more commercially viable. Mom reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "There will be other opportunities." "When?" Jake asked. "We've been at this for 3 years. 3 years, and we're playing the same small venues, making the same small amount of money. Maybe Derek's dad is right. Maybe I should think about getting a real job." "Don't you dare," Dad said sharply. Giving up now would make everything we've invested meaningless. Everything they'd invested. Not everything they'd sacrificed, not everything I'd given up. Everything they'd invested in Jake's dream. I excused myself from dinner and went upstairs. I had studying to do anyway. My pharmacology exam was the next day. As I sat at my desk reading about drug interactions and dosage calculations, I could hear my parents downstairs consoling Jake, telling him that success takes time, that every great artist faces rejection. And I thought about the conversation we'd never had. The conversation where they consoled me when I didn't get to go to Northwestern. The conversation where they told me that my dreams were worth investing in too. That conversation had never happened because they'd never seen my situation as a loss. They'd seen it as a reasonable sacrifice in service of something more important. Someone more important. I graduated from nursing school at the top of my class. The ceremony was small, just the 23 of us who had survived the program, but I was proud. I'd done it myself. No parental funding, no family connections, no shortcuts. Just 2 years of grinding through exhaustion and determination. My parents came to the graduation. They sat in the back and clapped politely when my name was called. Afterward, Mom hugged me and said she was proud. But 3 days later, when Jake's band got a gig opening for a semi-famous indie rock group, they drove 4 hours to see that show and posted about it all over Facebook. The double standard was so glaring I couldn't ignore it anymore. I was 22 years old. a licensed registered nurse, financially independent, and emotionally exhausted from trying to earn my parents' enthusiasm. So I made another decision that would shape the next chapter of my life. I applied for a job at Seattle Children's Hospital. Seattle was far enough from Chicago that I wouldn't have to watch Jake's continued musical mediocrity be celebrated while my actual achievements were treated as footnotes. It was a fresh start in a city where nobody knew me as Jake's sister or the one who didn't get to go to Northwestern. I got the job. Pediatric intensive care unit. It was exactly what I wanted. Challenging, meaningful work, helping sick children and their families. When I told my parents I was moving to Seattle, they were surprised but supportive in their distant way. "That's a big step," Mom said. "Are you sure you're ready to be so far from family?" "I need to build my own life," I said. "Well, we'll miss you," Dad said. "But we understand." Did they understand? Or were they just relieved that I wouldn't be around to witness their continued financial strain and emotional investment in Jake's increasingly unlikely dream? I didn't ask. I just packed up my Honda Civic and drove west. Seattle was everything Chicago wasn't. The mountains, the water, the coffee culture, the general sense that innovation and hard work were valued. I found a small apartment in Capitol Hill and threw myself into my job. Working in pediatric intensive care is heartbreaking and inspiring in equal measure. You see children fighting for their lives with courage that humbles you. You see parents who would do absolutely anything, sacrifice everything for their kids' well-being. And sometimes you see parents who make choices you can't understand. I remember one case in particular, a 12-year-old girl named Emma who needed a kidney transplant. Her father was a perfect match. But he was hesitating because he was a semi-professional athlete and was afraid the surgery would end his career. "I'm 34, he told me one day as we watched Emma sleep, connected to dialysis machines that were keeping her alive. "This might be my last shot at making it to the pros." I stared at him, this man who was prioritizing his own unlikely athletic dreams over his daughter's life. "Sir," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "your daughter needs this transplant." "I know that," he snapped. "You don't think I know that? But if I give up my career, how am I going to support her long term? How am I going to pay for her medical bills?" "You're going to pay for her medical bills by working a normal job like most parents do," I said, "and she's going to be alive to benefit from that support." He ended up having the surgery. Emma got her kidney and made a full recovery. But the conversation stuck with me because it was the first time I'd encountered someone whose reasoning reminded me of my own parents. The calculation of dreams versus responsibility. The weighing of unlikely success against guaranteed sacrifice. Except in Emma's case, her life was literally on the line. In my case, it had just been my future. I threw myself into work and gradually built a life in Seattle. I made friends with my colleagues. I joined a hiking group and discovered that I loved being outdoors. I started taking Spanish classes and volunteering at a free clinic. For the first time since high school, I felt like I was living my actual life instead of the consolation prize version of my life. But I still thought about my parents every day. I called them every Sunday, and the conversations always followed the same pattern. "How's work?" they'd ask. "Good. Busy. I'm learning a lot." "That's nice. Jake's band is working on new material." And then they'd spend 20 minutes updating me on Electric Midnight's latest developments. New songs, new gigs, new strategies for getting noticed. They talked about Jake's music career the way other parents talked about their children's marriages or grandchildren, with endless interest and investment. My work, which involved literally saving children's lives, got about 30 seconds of polite attention. After 2 years in Seattle, I started thinking about medical school again. I'd been working in healthcare long enough to know that I wanted to be a doctor, not just a nurse. I loved nursing, but I wanted the deeper knowledge, the broader scope of practice, the ability to diagnose and treat. I started studying for the NEP during my off hours. I researched medical schools, calculated costs, explored scholarship opportunities. And then, one Sunday night, my dad called with news that changed everything. "Jake's band is breaking up," he said without preamble. I was in my apartment making dinner and half watching a documentary about climate change. The words took a moment to register. What happened? Marcus got a job offer. Software development in Austin. Good money, benefits, the whole package. He's taking it. And the band can't replace him? Dad laughed bitterly. They've been trying to make it for 5 years, Sarah. 5 years. Derek already has 1 foot out the door. He's been talking about getting his teaching certificate. Tommy's girlfriend is pregnant, so he needs steady income. It's over. I set down my spatula and turned off the stove. How's Jake handling it? Not well. He's pretty devastated. He's been doing this for so long, it's all he knows. What's he going to do? That's the thing, Dad said, and I could hear something in his voice I'd never heard before. Regret, maybe. Or fear. He doesn't have any other skills. No college degree, no work experience outside of part-time jobs. He's 27 years old, and he's basically starting from scratch. I sat down heavily on my couch, and the money you invested? Gone. All of it. The equipment, the studio time, the marketing, the touring expenses. We've got nothing to show for it except some recordings that nobody wants to buy. The silence stretched between us, filled with everything we weren't saying. Dad, I started. I know, he said quietly. I know what you're thinking. Do you? You think we made a mistake. You think we should have supported your education instead of Jake's music. I closed my eyes. I think you made a choice. And now you're living with the consequences of that choice. We were trying to help him, Dad said. He needed the support more than you did. He needed the support more than I did. Or you thought his dreams were more important than mine? Another silence. You were always so capable, Dad said finally. So independent. You figured things out on your own. Jake needed us to believe in him. I needed you to believe in me too. We did believe in you. We do believe in you. No, I said, you expected me to succeed despite your lack of support. That's different from believing in me. That's taking me for granted. I could hear Dad breathing on the other end of the line. Sarah? I have to go, I said. I have an early shift tomorrow. Wait, there's something else? I waited. Your mom and we're in some financial trouble. The second mortgage, the credit cards we used for Jake's expenses. We're having trouble making the payments. My stomach clenched. How much trouble? We might lose the house. The house I grew up in, the house where I'd studied at the kitchen table while Jake practiced guitar in the garage. The house where my parents had chosen his dreams over my future. What do you want me to say? I asked. I don't know. I just thought you should know. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment for hours, staring out at the Seattle skyline. Part of me felt vindicated. Their investment in Jake hadn't paid off, just like I'd suspected it might not. Part of me felt guilty. These were my parents, and they were struggling. But mostly I felt sad. Sad for all of us. Sad for Jake, whose dreams had crumbled. Sad for my parents, who were facing financial ruin. Sad for the family we could have been if they'd made different choices. Over the next few months, I heard more details through our stilted phone conversations. Mom picked up extra nursing shifts, but at 58, the physical demands were wearing on her. Dad started driving for a rideshare company after his day job. Jake moved back home and was working at Best Buy while trying to figure out his next steps. The family I'd left behind was falling apart, and I was 3,000 miles away, building a life they'd never really supported. I got accepted to medical school at the University of Washington, full scholarship plus a stipend for living expenses. It was everything I'd dreamed of, 4 years later than I'd originally planned. When I called to tell my parents, Mom cried, "That's wonderful, sweetheart. We're so proud of you." "Are you?" I asked. "Of course we are. You've worked so hard for this." "I have worked hard for this. I worked hard without your help, without your financial support, without your encouragement. I did this myself." "Sarah? I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because it's true. And because I need you to understand that your choices had consequences. Not just for Jake, but for me too." Mom was quiet for a long moment. "We thought we were doing the right thing," she said finally. "I know you did. But that doesn't make it right. I started medical school 6 months later. The workload was intense, but I was used to working hard. I was used to pushing through exhaustion and stress. I was used to relying on myself. My first year, I focused entirely on academics. I had a lot of catching up to do. Some of my classmates had gone straight from prestigious undergraduate programs to medical school, while I'd taken a more circuitous route through community college and nursing. But I discovered that my nursing experience was actually an advantage. While my classmates were learning about patient care in theory, I already knew how to start IVs, how to talk to frightened families, how to work efficiently under pressure. During my second year, I started thinking about residency options. I was drawn to emergency medicine, the fast pace, the variety of cases, the immediate impact you could have on people's lives. I also started thinking about my family more. Not obsessively, but regularly. I wondered how they were doing, whether they'd managed to keep the house, whether Jake had found his footing in a non-musical career. But I didn't call more often, and I didn't visit. The hurt was still too fresh, and I was too busy building the life they'd never helped me plan. Then, halfway through my third year of medical school, I got a call that changed everything. It was Jake. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken directly in over a year, but something made me pick up the phone. Sarah? His voice sounded older, more mature than I remembered. Hi, Jake. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from Mom. It's fine, what's up? He was quiet for a moment. I wanted to apologize. I sat down slowly. For what? For everything. For taking the money that should have been yours. For letting Mom and Dad sacrifice your future for my stupid dream. For being too selfish and immature to see what was happening. I felt tears starting in my eyes. Jake. No, let me finish. I've been working at Best Buy for 2 years now, and I actually like it. I'm good at it. They promoted me to manager, and I'm making decent money. Not rock star money, but good money. And I keep thinking about how different things might have been if I'd just gotten a normal job after high school instead of chasing this fantasy. Your music wasn't a fantasy, I said. You're talented. Maybe. The talent doesn't guarantee success, and success in music doesn't justify what our parents did to you. I see that now. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. There's something else, Jake continued. Mom's sick. The world tilted. What do you mean, sick? Breast cancer, stage 2. She starts chemotherapy next week. I closed my eyes. How long have you known? She was diagnosed 3 weeks ago. She didn't want us to tell you because she didn't want to interfere with your studies. But I thought you should know. Of course I should know. She's my mother. I know, I tried to convince her to call you, but she's stubborn. She feels guilty about how things went with college, and she doesn't think she has the right to ask for your support now. That's ridiculous, I said. Whatever happened between us, she's still my mom. I know. That's why I'm calling. I think you should come home. Come home. To the house they might lose because they'd spent my college fund on Jake's band. To the parents who had never quite learned how to celebrate my achievements. To the family that had been broken long before Mom got sick. I'll think about it, I said. But I knew I was lying. I was already looking up flights. I arrived in Chicago on a Thursday evening in March. Jake picked me up at the airport, and I was surprised by how different he looked. Older, yes, but also more grounded somehow. He was wearing khakis and a button-down shirt instead of his usual ripped jeans and band t-shirt. You look good, I said as we walked to his car. I feel good. Different, but good. Like I'm finally living in reality instead of some fantasy version of my life. We drove through familiar neighborhoods, past the grocery store where I'd worked through high school and college, past the community college where I'd spent 2 years feeling like I was settling for less than I deserved. How bad is Mom's prognosis? I asked. Good, actually. The doctors caught it early, and she's responding well to treatment. She'll probably need surgery after chemo, but they expect her to make a full recovery. I felt relief wash over me. And Dad? He's Dad. He's trying to be strong for everyone else, but I can tell he's scared. They both are. We pulled into the driveway of my childhood home. It looked smaller than I remembered and older. The paint was peeling on the shutters, and the front garden was overgrown. The house looks tired, I said. Yeah, well, we all are. Mom and Dad have been working so hard just to keep up with the mortgage payments. There hasn't been much time or energy for maintenance. I followed Jake to the front door, my heart beating fast. I hadn't been home in 3 years. 3 years of Sunday phone calls and birthday cards, but no visits, no holidays together, no shared experiences. Jake opened the door and I could smell Mom's cooking chicken soup, the same recipe she'd made when we were kids and feeling sick. Mom, Dad, Jake called. Sarah's here. I heard footsteps and then Mom appeared in the hallway. She was thinner than I remembered and she was wearing a scarf around her head where her hair used to be. But her eyes were the same warm brown, and when she saw me, they filled with tears. Oh, sweetheart, she said, and then she was hugging me and I was hugging her back. And for a moment, it was like I was 12 years old again and the world was simple. I'm so glad you're here, she whispered. Dad appeared behind her, looking older and more tired than I'd expected. But when he saw me, his whole face lit up. There's our doctor, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Our doctor, not Jake's sister, or Sarah the nurse, our doctor. We sat in the living room and I noticed that Jake's fake gold records were gone. In their place were family photos, including some recent ones of me and my scrubs at the hospital, which surprised me. How do you have these? I asked, pointing to a photo of me and my hiking group at Mount Rainier. You post them on Facebook, Mom said. We see everything. We're so proud of the life you've built. Are you? Of course we are. You're in medical school, you're helping people, you're independent and successful. You did all of that on your own. I had to do it on my own. The room went quiet. We know, Dad said finally. We know we let you down. We know we made the wrong choice. Do you? Or do you just know that Jake's music career didn't work out? Dad looked at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. We've talked about this a lot over the past few years, Dad said. Jake helped us see things from your perspective. The truth is, we were so worried about him, so afraid that he wouldn't be able to make it in the world, that we forgot you might need support too. You are always so capable, Mom added, so determined. We thought you'd be fine no matter what. I am fine, I said, but that's not the point. The point is that you didn't give me a chance to succeed with your support. You made me prove I could succeed without it. We're sorry, Mom said, tears running down her cheeks. We're so sorry. If we could go back and do things differently. But you can't, I said. None of us can. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years of misunderstandings settling around us. So, where do we go from here? Jake asked. I looked around the room, at my parents, who were older and frailer than I wanted to admit, at my brother, who had grown up a lot in the past few years, at the house where I'd learned to dream big and then learned that dreams weren't always enough. I don't know, I said honestly. I'm still hurt. I'm still angry about some things. But I'm here because you're my family, and family doesn't abandon each other when things get hard. Even when family abandons you first? Jake asked quietly. I looked at him. You didn't abandon me. You were 22 and focused on your own dreams. That's normal. It was Mom and Dad's job to make sure both of us felt supported. And we failed you, Dad said. We failed you and we're sorry. I know you are, and I appreciate that. But sorry doesn't fix the lost time, or the extra years it took me to get to medical school, or the way I felt like I didn't matter for so long. What can we do? Mom asked. How can we make it up to you? I thought about it. What did I want from them? An acknowledgement of their mistake? I had that. Financial compensation? They didn't have money to give. A guarantee that they'd never prioritize one child over another again? Jake and I were adults now. That ship had sailed. I want you to be proud of me, I said finally. Not just politely supportive, but actually proud. The way you were proud of Jake when you thought his band was going to make it. We are proud of you, Dad said. Then show me. Tell people about my achievements the way you used to tell people about Jake's music. Post about my accomplishments on Facebook. Call me when something good happens at work and you want to celebrate with someone. We can do that, Mom said. We should have been doing that all along. I stayed for a week. I went with Mom to her chemotherapy appointments and met her medical team. I helped Dad organize their bills and figure out a realistic budget for their debt payments. I spent time with Jake, getting to know the person he'd become since his music career ended. It wasn't a magical healing week where all of our problems disappeared. There were still moments of awkwardness, still unspoken resentments, still the reality that our family dynamics had been fundamentally damaged by years of unequal treatment. But there were also moments of genuine connection, like when Mom asked detailed questions about my medical school rotations and actually listened to the answers, or when Dad showed me an article he'd saved about advances in emergency medicine because he thought I'd find it interesting, or when Jake told me he'd been following my hiking adventures online and was thinking about taking up outdoor activities himself. On my last night, we sat around the dinner table together for the first time in years. Not because we were celebrating Jake's achievements or mourning his failures, but just because we were family and we'd missed each other. I want you to know something, Mom said as we were clearing the dishes. Even though we made mistakes, big mistakes, watching you succeed despite everything has made us prouder than any gold record ever could have. Even a real gold record? I asked with a small smile. Even a real gold record. What you've accomplished, the person you've become. You did that with your own strength and determination. That's more impressive than anything we could have bought for you. I would rather have had your support and been less impressive, I said. I know, and we would rather have given you that support and seen what you could have accomplished with it. I flew back to Seattle with mixed emotions. I was glad I'd gone home, glad I'd been there for Mom's treatment, glad we'd started to address some of our family issues. But I was also relieved to return to my own life, the life I'd built without their help or approval. Over the next 2 years, things slowly improved between us. Mom recovered fully from her cancer treatment. Dad got a promotion at work that helped them stabilize their finances. Jake met a woman named Lisa who was as grounded and practical as he was becoming, and they got engaged. And my parents kept their promise. They started sharing my achievements on social media. They called to celebrate when I got accepted to a competitive emergency medicine residency. They sent care packages during my most stressful rotations. It wasn't the same as having had their support from the beginning, but it was something. It was acknowledgement. It was effort. I graduated from medical school 2 months ago. The ceremony was small, just us fourth-year students and our families. But when they called my name, I heard my parents cheering louder than anyone else in the auditorium. Afterward, as we were taking photos, Mom pulled me aside. I know we can't undo the past, she said, but I want you to know that every day, I think about how different things might have been if we'd supported your dreams the way we supported Jake's. We can't live in the past, I said. All we can do is try to do better going forward. Do you think we can? Do better, I mean. I looked at her, at this woman who had raised me, who had made mistakes, who was trying to make amends. I think we're already doing better, I said. And we were. 3 weeks ago, I started my residency at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle. Emergency medicine, just like I'd planned. My first day was overwhelming and exhilarating and everything I'd dreamed it would be. That night, I called my parents to tell them about it. How was it? Mom asked immediately. So I told them everything about the car accident victim we saved, about the elderly man who thanked me for taking time to explain his diagnosis, about the child who stopped crying when I made funny faces at her. And they listened, really listened, and celebrated with me in a way they'd never celebrated my achievements before. We're so proud of you, Dad said, Dr. Sarah Miller. Our daughter, the emergency room doctor. Our daughter, the emergency room doctor. It only took them 8 years to learn how to say that with the same pride they used to reserve for Jake's music. But they learned, and maybe that's what forgiveness is, not pretending the hurt never happened, but recognizing when someone has genuinely changed and choosing to build something new together. I'm not the same person I was when I was 17 and didn't get to go to Northwestern. I'm stronger now, more independent, more resilient. I know I can succeed without anyone's help, which is both a superpower and a burden. My parents aren't the same people either. They've learned that supporting one child at the expense of another isn't love, it's favoritism. They've learned that believing in someone's dreams means believing in their ability to achieve those dreams through their own effort, not believing that you need to sacrifice everything to make those dreams possible. And Jake isn't the same person either. He's learned that dreams without realistic plans are just fantasies, and that there's dignity in honest work even if it's not glamorous. We're all different now, and maybe that's okay. Maybe families don't have to be perfect from the beginning. Maybe they just have to be willing to grow. 5 years ago, I knocked on my parents' door carrying years of resentment and hurt. Today, when I call them, I'm carrying something different. Not forgiveness exactly, and not the erasure of the past, but hope for a better future. And sometimes, hope is enough to build on. So to anyone out there who's ever felt overlooked, undervalued, or forgotten by the people who were supposed to support you, your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to recognize it. You can build a beautiful life even when no one believes you can. You can succeed even when the people who are supposed to help you choose to help someone else instead. It's harder that way, it takes longer, and it leaves scars that never fully disappear. But it's possible. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the people who let you down learn from their mistakes and show up for you later, even if it's not when you needed them most. And sometimes, that second chance is worth taking, even if it comes 8 years too late.